close this conference. It's a pleasure, a delight to have Professor Albert Newen to deliver the fourth ARED public lecture.
Thank you very much. But before I do that, I think it's time and it's adequate to thank Giacomo, Crescio, and especially Ali, our technical background, for all this, putting all this gorgeous event together. Thank you. Okay, now the minor part. Let me start with the talk. Is there a feature that marks an anthropological borderline? Before going into content, let me only remark that we have a Center for Mind and Cognition together with philosophy of mind and cognition, especially in Bochum, inviting many foreigners to come to our center. If you're interested in joining and visiting us, you're welcome to do so. Okay, the key question is, can we find some cognitive features that allow us to establish an anthropological borderline between human and non-human animals? We are treating that question, and one central aim we should much better look for is, can we develop a framework to account for the commonalities and differences between humans and non-human animals, even if we are not able to establish a borderline? Okay, so let us first deal with the borderline question. So what are the candidates? A feature which is present in all humans but cannot be found in any non-human animal. I mean, we cannot go too high in the sense that we look at, humans are able to compose operas. But how many humans can do that? Okay, so we have to go a little bit lower. Other candidates are also such that we are, whom should we integrate? Should we integrate babies with all of their incompetencies, just newborns? That gets also tricky. So the idea is to have a feature which is the least complex one, present in mainly all humans, having a normal development, not looking at mental disorders, having a minimal age, but not in any non-human animals can this feature be found. I just want to indicate it's not so easy to make that a reasonable claim to search for something, not aiming too high, not aiming too low. So, furthermore, some methodological challenge we are all aware of in this group. There's a danger of anthropomorphism. Not every performance that looks like similar behavior in humans has the same underlying mechanism. Let me explore that, explain it a little bit by looking at spatial cognition. There's a well-known homing behavior of the desert ant. After an unsystematic search starting from the nest, it finds some food and it's able to go back in a straight line to its nest. Very interesting spatial navigation. But what is the background of that? If you display the ant at the very moment it finds its food, it just takes the same vector. It doesn't find its nest. It has an internal representation, which is a kind of the result of path integration, but it's not that clever that it is dealing with something that is more complicated and can be characterized by additional abilities. So we also have something like that simple mechanism of path integration. But humans also have the ability of spatial orientation with landmarks. My hotel takes the second street where the greenhouse is to the left. You come back to your hotel. We have spatial orientation with mental maps. Everyone at his university knows where his office is in the building after walking a long time. Several storages are at the end of the second storage. There, somewhere is my office. In addition, we humans have spatial orientation on the base of explicit maps drawn or other geographical tools. And these tools are those that, they're missing. Well, maybe I have the wrong, do I have the wrong version? Okay, anyway, so we all know that we have this, let me check one more whether I really have the wrong. No, it's okay. Yeah, it's okay. Before going to the tools, I was just worried whether I have the wrong version. If I have, we have these additional abilities going beyond this desert ants, these 3 abilities. Now, looking at commonalities, so there are the differences in this example, and the danger of anthropomorphizing, our abilities are different. We are sharing a very minimal mechanism, but others are different. But now looking at commonalities with mice and rats, there are studies now showing that place cells and grid cells in hippocampus and entorhinal cortex are the neural bases that we share with rats. And the spatial orientation to connect that with these abilities is such that there is not only shown that we share the mechanism of spatial orientation with rats, but the spatial orientation with landmarks is shown to be realized in rats based on hippocampus, and the spatial orientation with mental maps. When rats ran around in an unknown maze for a while, they automatically build up a mental map, and if you block a certain route, they find the shortest route to the food anyway. So we have the same different mental or spatial orientation mechanisms that we share with rats. What is different is that we also have our artificial tools. We have tools to navigate on sea, we have tools to navigate on land, and nowadays, of course, we use our phone in all our conditions of walking, biking, and driving. So going once back for a second, these tools are a kind of base and usable as a kind of cultural extension of our basic abilities that we share with rats. On the basis of that, we have this this extensive use of tools that gives us a special embedding in our cultural setting. One thing that I want to highlight with this notion of situated cognition is that we have to account for our special way of embodiment, brain-body interaction, and also that we have hands, but birds have beaks to deal with their environment, that we have special ways of acting in the environment, and that the physical and social environment is essential for our cognitive abilities. It's a really shortcut perspective to say that our mental abilities are just the product of mental mechanisms in the brain. They are a product that I think is nicely illustrated with the spatial orientation possibilities. Our spatial navigation is based, to simplify, on the same mechanisms that we share with the rat, with a more extensive memory ability, but then shaped in the cultural environment with tools like geographic maps and GPS that enable us to do these outstanding abilities to coming here together in Stirling. Okay, so this kind of perspective of situated cognition is such that one and the same cognitive ability is always seen as a result of internal cognitive mechanism plus the environment that enables it to unfold it. Second perspective, coming back to the stars, the methodological challenge, I touched a little bit that we should not anthropomorphize too easily on a behavioral perspective only. We should not over-intellectualize human abilities, highlighted nicely already with the notion of anthropofabulation, but we should also not miss relevant similarities discovered by species-adequate testings, as I indicated that we can test rats about spatial navigation with landmarks, and we see they can do it, and we share this ability with them. Okay, now, what are recent answers to the anthropological borderline question? Is there a candidate of an ability that only humans in a, let's say, a pragmatic sense have and non-human animals don't? We discussed a lot about rationality. Let us have a short look at rationality, language, understanding numbers, episodic memory, self-awareness, and social cognition in other dimensions. So there is one understanding of theoretical rationality in a narrow sense proposed by Papineau, that it is constituted by general means and reasoning, should be tested by understanding causal reasoning or causal relations. And identifying truth as an end, a high-level philosophical notion, should be tested by full-blown theory of mind ability. I take this suggestion just as a working hypothesis to get along with a rationality in a narrow sense. In a wide sense, all the candidates discussed are part of rationality. In a narrow sense, let us have a look at causal understanding. We discussed a lot of that. So I'll try to give you more a bird's eye view here, so a very shortly glance on the different abilities. We heard about the trap tube task in the talk of Sanjay Rikovic, and this is one task that is nicely passed by many species. Tool use and tool construction was also mentioned, and it is something that ravens do. And Betty is a well-known raven that actually creates out of a metal stick a hook and takes out food with a container in a very hidden, difficult reachable place. Now, here I again remind you about the trap tube task, where you have to push from the right side, not to push the food into the trap. The transfer to the table trap task is domain general feature and interesting ability of causal understanding. And now to illustrate that a little bit more for those that are not so intensely in animal cognition, let us have a look at this feature here. Can we have it louder? Okay. Here are 8.
It takes time to have a look.
Now give me one more idea. Here, it has to, the raven has to solve the following problem. It has to discover the sequence. The sequence is not trained. The background is each of the tasks to take a small stick here and then to use it for further things you will see. Each singular type of task is trained, but the sequence is not trained. The sequence is demanded to get the food, which is here. And it is a situation the raven sees the first time, being acquainted with the singular tasks.
Succeeds if they are marked first. It takes time to have a look and then starts with the short stick. Stage 1. It finds it's too short to reach the food. He then sets off to get the first stone. He drops it.
Ah, that's too much.
Then something seems to click. He deploys the first stone. Then another. Final stage. success. 8 individual stages of one complex puzzle completed.
Okay, so this is a very impressive causal understanding. Is it really causal understanding? Now, I think more convincing for researchers, maybe the studies of Aaron Plaisdell, who investigated rats again, and he can show that rat behavior is really able to, that rats are able to distinguish different kinds of causal model, namely a common causal model and the causal chain model. A common causal model, so they're starting with the same observation. There's a certain light, and then after the light is on, the tone is delivered and the food is delivered at the same time. If you then make an intervention task, they can press a lever, and the lever the lever activates the tone alone. Then they learn that the tone alone is not connected to the light and the food. So it's kind of this intervention shows that it is a common cause model, while the same intervention leading to the light and causing the food is a kind of changing that to a causal chain understanding. And so there are quite convincing stories that give, in addition to the nice illustration, that it is actually a causal mental model that is learned. Now, creativity. This is also for many a well-known task. You see a chimp that there is a peanut in the fixed clear tube. The chimp, that's an untrained situation. The chimp has no training about the situation. How do you get the peanut? Okay, and this is just using its normal water supply in the background and guts the peanut. Okay, so that's kind of a good sign that animals have the ability to of a certain causal understanding. They can use tools, they can create tools. I didn't show the Betty story, and they have a certain creativity. Now, according to Papineau's understanding, we should not only have a means understanding for rationality in narrow sense, we also should have some theory of mind. This is highly debated, but looking at theory of mind only is not so fruitful. I think we should look at precursors where we have some evidence of understanding others' goals and intentions, understanding the perceptual perspective of another person or another agent, and then maybe full-blown theory of mind, false belief understanding is still lacking. But let us have a short look reminding you about main experiments about understanding others' goals. Here, chimps observe a human carrying a bucket, so the hands are covered, and the human pushes a button, switching on the light with the left foot. The same behavior here with hands free. Now the chimps are a kind of requested to also switch on the light. How do they do that? In the case A, when they observe the person with the hands covered, they use their hands to switch on the light. In the case where the hands of the person is free, they use also their left foot to push the button. That's an imitation behavior that accounts for the goal-directed behavior that is done by the agent. Seeing what the other can see, there's a famous study of Joseph Pole and with Tomasello, that you have two chimpanzees again. There is a dominant in the social hierarchy and the subordinate. The subordinate is released first. There are two bananas. One is visible for the dominant, the other is only visible for the subordinate. The subordinate is released. If you would take the non-hidden banana for the dominant, he would be in trouble. And so accounting for the visual perspective, he actually takes the hidden banana, and this indicates the sensitivity for the perspective. There are now more very interesting experiments showing the sense of perspectivity. You all know this full-blown false belief task. Sally takes the ball into the basket, she leaves. Meanwhile, Anne moves the ball into the box. Sally comes back, where is the ball? The 2-year-olds answer, the ball is in the box, where it is. Only the 4-year-olds clearly answer, it's in the basket, where will Sally search for the ball? She will search in the basket because she put it there, she thinks it's there, and so on. Okay, so there are non-linguistic versions of that. The first one developed by Onishi and Balajon. The same idea, a person puts an object in a green box, and then here is a picture missing. You have a train that the person can leave in the false belief condition. Then there is a train just moving the object from the green box into the yellow box. And then the person either grasped in the yellow box or in the green box, and the kids observing now this whole scene are looking longer, being surprised in the grasping to the yellow box compared to grasping to the green box. That's the implicit false belief task that you can also use for animals. It was first a negative result by Laurie Santos. She couldn't find that in monkeys and in chimpanzees. But then there was the same idea in a variant where you does not look for longer how long they looking, the looking duration, but where they look first. Where do they look first? And the idea is you look first where you anticipate the object to be. And this kind of looking first experiment shows that chimpanzees, bonobos, and orangutans are a kind of passing the false belief task. But that's not the last word in this debate. It's still an open question for replication, but this is an interesting example, and Ludwig Huber is here, having done experiments with dogs who are sensitive to true and false beliefs. But this is a kind of also research under further investigation to establish what exactly is going on there. So to sum up this first part, animals have an understanding of causal relations, even applying them creatively. Concerning theory of mind and precursors, we observe understanding of intentions of others and of perspectivity, including amodal representations, which I did not have time to send, but they seem to lack a full-blown theory of mind, or at least it's not so clear yet. We have to wait for further evidence. But animals possess some essential features of human rationality, of causal understanding, and of social understanding of others' goals and actions. So rationality is not, at least concerning these dimensions, you find important precursors of high-level rationality in non-human animals. Let us look at language, concepts. So Davidson is famous for arguing that only humans possess concepts and have symbolic understanding. And maybe in animals, all we have is mere association. So let me look at a few examples to give some challenge here. First, there are the dog studies. Kaminsky and Julia Fisher and Joseph Cole first investigated the dog Rico, who has learned 200 labels of individual objects, names structurally, and he was able to bring, on the basis of selected 10 objects by the researchers, and bring Timmy, he was able to bring the correct object 37 times of 40 trials. And now there is another border collie study that's interesting. It shows the same effect, but Chaser learned 1,000 names of objects, and he could then also retrieve out of 20 toys she completed 883 tests of this same type, which is not so interesting. She performed also extremely well. The new aspect was that Chaser was not only having names of objects, let's say Timmy being this toy, but he also learned verbs to pour, to nose, and to bring. So that's the first combination you observed in dogs, that to paw means to move the object with the paw to the owner, to nose with the nose, and to bring, to bite in it and run over to the owner. And so what actually Chaser could then do is follow the command paw Timmy and bring it that way. Okay, so that's in addition, we heard all for Sanja Sekovic that there is learning by exclusion from Rico, but also from Chaser. So that shows that there is at least an understanding of names as symbols for individual objects. In the case of Chaser, also a little bit of a combination of some verbs, action verbs with names. And the most interesting case already mentioned in the discussions is the gray parrot Alex. And interestingly, he is not working with names as labels of individual objects only, but he has this understanding of properties. So if you present him with an object which he didn't see in the learning phase, you can ask the question, what color? He answers red, having learned 5 color labels. What shape? On the basis of 4 shape labels, he says square. And what material? On the selection of 3 materials, glass, wood, and metal, he can argue it should be a wooden shape here, that it is wood. Okay, and here I give you an impression of further things.
That's right. You're a good boy. No, honey, no, you can't go back yet. You can. Want some water? All right. Do you want some water? Or you just asking to interrupt? You just asked me to interrupt. I know. Okay. I know. What color bigger? What color bigger? Green. Oh, you're a good boy. Alex, oh, look, my house for you. Hey, look. These are all these little toys. Look. Hey, look, can you tell me? On the tray. How many green block? How many green block? Look on the tray. How many green block?
Alex can't just count up all the green things, and he can't just count up all the blocks. Alex has never been trained with this particular collection of things.
How many green blocks? Good parent, 2 green.
Alex hasn't just.
Okay, so this I think is also illustrative as a video. It shows that furthermore, if you go into a theoretical background, which I argued for, that the test conditions of Alex are sufficient to show that he possesses concepts of red, green, of square, triangle, and of the specific properties of the objects that he's labeling, plus concepts of the basic numbers. So nevertheless, you could argue, okay, but is it really symbolic understanding in the sense that some representation is something stands in for something? Is there evidence for symbolic representation that something stands for something? And here I think the experiments from Julia Fischer and her colleague Schmidt are very telling. They replicated the following thing. So if you they did it with monkeys. I illustrate the following condition. So the monkeys are in a cage and they can offer them at the left and the right side 2 plates. On the left side are 2 grapes, on the right side are 6 grapes. And as soon as they get one, the other is taken away. So then you observe how often do they go for the 6 grapes? Not very impressive, only 68%. That's not convincing. Convincing is above 80%. And so then they made the following trick already in earlier publications, that they hide these grapes under a cover and put 2 pebbles on top of 2 pebbles representing 2 grapes, 6 pebbles representing 6 grapes. And then they replicated the test under these conditions. And now we observe a performance of 84.4%. That's quite impressive. So they understand that the pebbles are representing the grapes they then get. Now, that's a new step that's coming now. That was extremely clever. They went back after the chimpanzees the monkeys have understood the situation. They now substituted the grapes on top of the box, the pebbles on top of the box, by grapes they didn't get. The grapes they get are only in the box. So they have to go to the box, but they don't get these grapes, they get these grapes. They have to understand that these grapes are representing the number, and they get the other grapes. And again, the performance was at the same level. The performance was at the same level of 85% in this condition where the argument can be they understand that grapes, these grapes that they can see, represent the grapes they get for eating. And the interesting case, which also shows limits of that, if you after that training go back to the original situation where here are 2 grapes and 6 grapes on the plate directly visible, they are back to 65%. So after that training, going back to the original condition, they don't manage. So how can you explain that? Maybe they are just overwhelmed by seeing the foods they can directly eat, or there is something like that they have to have a certain format of representation, I would like to call it. They can understand that something stands for something, but they can only do that if they are kind of not directly intrigued by the food they perceive as something they can get. Okay, now I think I leave that as something to indicate that there is something like symbolic understanding in an interesting way that is a core of our basis of linguistic semantic understanding. Now, mathematics, there I think, I hope that works, that I can show you 2 videos. Now I can, you see a chimp that at the first video must first only tap the sequence of the labels, of the number labels. That's not very impressive, but they can learn the sequence of the number labels. And they do it quite nicely. Now, but that's of course not yet number understanding. It takes a second one where they, after learning the number labels, they now on the left side see 2 points, and then they have to push the number 2 out of the 9. And that's, of course, number understanding, if they do that right. Now I have to go back. Can we see it? Okay. So now you can see. And the points are, of course, organized always differently. There's no pattern learning. Yeah. Three. Okay. 2. Okay, you get the idea. So, now we have to stop this video. Okay, and back to back to the next slide, which is episodic memory. So what we are looking at as another candidate after, let's say, having a sense of number as the important, crucial precursor of understanding and having mathematics, another candidate for specific human abilities, our autobiographical memory. We have an extended autobiographical memory, and in non-human animals, it is shown that we also have a what, where, when memory in scrub jays first by Nicola Clayton. She could show that scrub jays have it by doing the following experiment. She offered them something to eat, and if they have eaten enough, they start to hide the food for later. And if you give them worms and peanuts, they hide both, and they remember where they have hidden both. So they find the worms and the peanuts. The interesting aspect of the test is that they like worms much more than peanuts. And worms decay after a certain period of time. So what they did, they observed where they are looking for food when they are hungry again after 2 hours or 3 hours. They go for worms only. They find them. And if they are hungry again after 10 hours, when worms are no longer eatable, they only go for the peanuts. So they have a representation where they have hidden something that they find it back, which type of food did they place where, and when did they place it there, having an internal representation of how long it is away, how long it is past now to whether it's worth going for the worms or whether it's no longer worth going for the worms. Okay, what may be not so much known is that there is even a more demanding proof of episodic memory in rats. Yeah, the lab of Jonathan Crystal in Bloomington is doing an amazing work. So he works with an 8-arm mace, and he has shown that rats can learn very interesting conditionals. What is the basis of that? The rats can distinguish, of course, different types of food. He works with standard food and chocolate. They can distinguish 3 types of time: morning, midday, and evening. And they can, of course, distinguish the 8 arms of the mace. And he shows that they can learn the following condition. When standard food is found in arm number 2 in the morning, there will be chocolate in arm number 7 at noon. And this behavior is then nicely shown. And this shows that they have episodic memory plus an understanding of conditionals. Okay, so, and why is that maybe not so astonishing? Because we have the central neural equipment of hippocampus and parahippocampal regions. Without going to that, we have them in many species, and we have here in colored way analogs, even in radically differently organized brains of birds. We have analogs of parahippocampal region that are important for enabling these abilities. Let us have a short look at self-awareness. So self-awareness is something that is tested in the mirror recognition task. Of course, everyone knows that chimps have it. In Bochum, it was shown that magpies can do it. Frans de Waal has shown that elephants have it. And there are more species, dolphins and some other species, but it's not more than 7 species where the mirror recognition task is shown to be implemented. Concerning self-awareness, I think also the meta-representational aspect is important. Now, meta-representation is having several functions. It's also an important aspect of false belief task precursors, but here I want to highlight it as an aspect of self-awareness. Because the test for metacognition should not be meta-representation, for metacognition, going back to Hampton, is the following. You show a chimp one picture, And then you have a certain delay, and you show it 4 pictures. And then the picture first seen is either part of the 4 pictures or not. And then the answering behavior is such that if the picture is in, you push the upper button. If your picture is not in, you push the lower button. And if you do it right, you get 6 grades. That's a great reward. If you do it wrong, you get nothing. And the interesting case is that they're implemented then an opt-out button. So they varied the delay time from 0, immediate reaction, 15 seconds, 30 seconds, 45 seconds. And the interesting observation is at the beginning, they always go for the test. And after 30 seconds, they systematically opt out. And the interpretation is they have a sense that their memory is no longer good enough to answer it. And the opt-out question, I have to say, gives them 1 grade for sure. So 1 grade for sure is better than going into the test not being sure that you know about it. Okay, and there is a lot of follow-up studies of metacognition in recent research. So social cognition revisited. So social cognition, why social cognition again? We had the false belief tasks is a very specific ability. Social cognition is much richer, and Tomasello is the one who had several claims about social cognition. And he has made this following interesting observation in a science study, Hermann et al., that he took the same non-linguistic physical tasks and gave it to 2.5-year-old children and to chimpanzees and orangutans. And the chimps were at the same level. The orangutans a bit less good in performance, but still almost equal. But in the social domain, non-linguistic social tasks, kids were much better. And so again, he said, yeah, it's social cognition that makes us special. The problem of this testing was by Tomasello that he did the social tasks, for example, doing a shared play, the social task he did in a way that a human played with a chimp, not a chimp played with a chimp. And there is a very nice book from Julia Fischer, Ape Society, where she describes the social life of chimpanzees observed in the wild. And this questions a lot of this radical difference claims. I can only touch now one aspect, cooperation, and I want to highlight one work of elephant cooperation that maybe also.
The elephant needs to eat. That's because scientists now believe they're among one of the most cognitively advanced animals. Elephants recently aced an IQ test, with 2 of them even figuring out shortcuts the researchers hadn't thought of. Here's how the test worked. The researchers placed a sliding table holding bowls of corn on one side of a volleyball net. A rope was tied around the table so that it would only move if 2 elephants working together pulled on the dangling ends of the rope. In this first video, elephants Umpan and Cod successfully pulled the rope at the same time. On the next clip, Wannalee is released first and then waits for Jojo to arrive before pulling. On this video, impatient elephant Sri Sayan fails to wait for his partner. By the time the second elephant gets there, the rope is out of reach and no one gets the reward. Finally, and to the surprise of the researchers, these 2 elephants used an alternative strategy in getting the corn, with the one at the bottom of the video holding the rope in place with their foot, while the other pulls the rope with their trunk. Scientists say the test highlights not only the intelligence of individual elephants, also their ability to.
Okay, so the important thing is here, you did not hear it, that he is just letting him all the work done. So he just keeps his foot in place and that's it. Okay, so another thing that is quite known, but I also give a short glance on that, is cooperation and the sense of fairness. A sense of fairness sounds also very human-like. And there is a study in the lab of Franz de Waal.
One on the
So-
right is the one who gets grape. The one who gets cucumber, note that the first piece of cucumber is the one who gets cucumber. One on the right is the one who gets grapes. The one who gets cucumber, note that the first piece.
Where is it now, the video? I thought this is not the same.
That's great. The one who gets cucumber notes that the first piece of cucumber is first piece he eats. Then she sees the other one getting great, and you will see what happens.
Okay.
So she gives a rock to us, that's the task. And we give her a piece of cucumber and she eats it. The other one needs to give a rock to us. And that's what she does. And she gets a grape. And she eats it. The other one sees that. He gives a rock to us now, gets again cucumber.
Okay. I think, yeah, you get the idea that this is quite convincing as a candidate for sense of fairness. What about conventional behavior that is a kind of culture-like? There's a famous example that only in Japan developed a group of monkeys that developed the potato washing behavior, and it spread in this population, but it is not developed anywhere else. And it's an interesting candidate for a kind of a conventional behavior that does not have any necessary biological benefit, but spread in that community. A very interesting observation, actually discussed with, investigated by colleagues from Osnabrück. We have this shared research training group with 12 PhD students. One PhD student works on medical self-treatment. This is a study that is published from a different group. It is nicely shown that orangutans, they kind of search for a kind of leaf that is actually medically effective. They bite on it and put it on the eye in this case, and then it supports the healing process. Now the study that's ongoing is with chimps in the wild. They observe the chimps in the wild, and they have wounds very often, so they have a lot of material. And the preliminary observation is that one of the 15 chimps that they have very clearly observed not only does self-healing, it also supports the healing and goes and treats other chimps of the group. So that's not yet published, but the material is stunning. Okay, so candidates so far. We discussed rationality, concept possession, or at least semantic understanding of labels, number understanding, episodic memory, self-awareness, some parts of social cognition. I think we always found some very interesting precursors. What should we do with that? I propose we should stop searching for a radical borderline between humans and other animals due to a strong continuity of the development of abilities in evolution. Also due to strong context dependency of some abilities. Think about this pebbles and grape situation where the context dependence, whether it's directly available or whether it's presented as something where pebbles are visible, makes a large difference in the cognitive behavior. So the alternative, not only to look at commonalities, but also to highlight differences, is to develop something like a comparison of cognitive profiles. I call it the multiple cognitive profile view. Let me give one final example illustrating that, and then I'll stop because everyone is tired. The interesting behavior I do not have video of is that rats, cage-mate rats, do the following. If in a situation where the helper rat already knows the mechanism, she comes in and sees her cage-mate rat in the trap. And she is hungry, the helper rat is hungry, she sees a plate with chocolate directly nearby. What is she doing? Is she eating the chocolate? No, she first frees her cage mate and then shares the chocolate. Wow, isn't that empathic behavior? It seems so, but then there is the request, oh, maybe that's only driven by the selfish desire for social interaction. And there were experiments going that, and there is a debate going on a little bit back and forth. But at least this very simple selfish desire explanation does not work because it does not account for the fact of the freeing first and then followed by sharing the food completely. To make it simple for the time being. But what can we do? Is it really full-blown empathy in the same way as humans have empathy, or is it not? To work out a comparative perspectives that allows us to account for commonalities and differences, I propose something like a multidimensional view in the sense that, without going into detail, I propose that for empathy, we should distinguish registration of the other's affective state, being in pain or being in fear, registering the situation, being in the cage, registering the other's cognitive states. In this case, with the rats, this is not applicable, really, as we will see. And then there is an answering behavior, and the answering behavior should have a certain degree of behavioral flexibility and should be other-oriented and not self-oriented. The idea, in a nutshell, very quickly, is the following. If you want to have an empirically based comparison, we argue in a large team, including Ludwig Huber and others, that we have these 5 dimensions. These 5 dimensions can each be characterized by different features, maybe cognitive perspective taking, by visual perspective taking, 1 and 2, preference of others, attentional state of others, full-blown theory of mind. And then you have operationalizations, and you can look at these operationalizations for each feature and determine the degree on the basis of existing tests, and thereby have an average value for cognitive perspective taking. And you do that for every dimension, and then you can even look at effective, this is consolation behavior, sensitive for the others, and then you find in the literature that consolation behavior, that's simple for all the species, rodents, great apes, canids, and so on. We have P4 means it's the presence, 4 is high, 0 is not existing, presence is high, reliability 2 given the literature. So we go through that in our team, and then the result is the following profile where rats have intermediate level of registering the other's affective state, some registration of the other situation, almost no sensitive for the other's cognitive perspective, but behavioral flexibility is pretty high and other orientedness of the behavior is intermediate. But you see that if empathic behavior is embedded in the profile that is different from that of dogs and of birds, so that we can say the same behavior in chimpanzees, in great apes, and in dogs and in rodents is partially differently to be evaluated because it's embedded in a different cognitive profile. But there are also commonalities, and the commonalities are such that in our profile observation, corvids and dogs are not so far away from each other, which is at the first glance astonishing, while rats seem to be a bit different. So this is the basic idea of a multidimensional profile, and the suggestion is we should apply it not only for empathy, we should apply it for every cognitive ability that we investigate, because we do not have sufficient mechanistic explanation that we can rely on. And the cognitive profile idea is developed in some suggestions, and I think that's what we should do to investigate the question whether we are really different. It should be substituted from the question, where are we different and where are we same? And so to conclude, we should stop searching for the anthropological borderline. We should use this alternative multidimensional profile view to answer the two questions. The distribution question, which species has a certain ability, for example, empathy, and which quality of empathic behavior can we observe? And maybe looking at that, we are not that different from other animals at all. Thank you.